It's obvious to all that strong economic growth has a strategic significance not only for stronger national defense, which is a strategic imperative, and a higher standard of living for all Israelis, but also because of growth, better opportunities for all Israeli citizens, irrespective of their age and even their education. So many of you, thank you. So many of you may be asking, don't we already have the answer? Israel's annual growth rate is approximately 3%, and just look at what's been achieved in the technology sector in a relatively short period of time. I counter and say, yes, but. The question is, why has technology been so successful, and its success hasn't been replicated in other parts of the economy? So think of it this way. The technology sector accounts for between 12 and 15% of the US economy. There's not exact data, but it's pretty good numbers. And employs 200,000 to 300,000 people. Israel has more companies on NASDAQ, this very significant stock exchange in the United States and the world. Most of those are related to technology, than any other country in the world except the United States. This is all very impressive. But the problem for Israel is that the rest of the economy, which employs 3 million people, 10 times as many as the tech sector, has grown at a much smaller pace. Not entirely stagnant, but growth continues to be slow year after year. After all citizens should be asking, why such success in one part of the economy and not in the other?
תנועות שקמו על יסוד הזה של תבונה בלבד, תבונה מדע בלבד, הם היו קודם כל הרציונליזם של הנאורות. אחרי זה המרקסיזם. אחרי זה התנועה הנאו-דרווינית של הפשיזם. וכל התנועות האלה, כולם הם תנועות, תשימו לב שהן תנועות מהפכניות. כל אחד שונה מהשני, אבל כולם תנועות מהפכניות. באיזה מובן שכל אחד מהם אומר בצורה מפורשת, את נחלת העבר אנחנו לא צריכים. כי יש לנו את התבונה, יש לנו את המדע. אנחנו יודעים את מה שאנחנו צריכים לעשות בגלל שזה בא מתבונה ומדע. עכשיו, השמרנים הם כבר במשך מאות שנים במדינות שונות, אצל עמים שונים, נלחמים כדי לגן על הלאום, על המסורת הדתית, על המשפחה, על המדינה המוגבלת, על זכויות קניין, אפילו על מושג האלוהים, נגד כל התנועות האלה. במקום מהפכנות שעוקרת כל מה שהיה בעבר, השמרנים המציאו מה שנקרא רסטורציה, בעברית שיקום, להחזיר את העטרה ליושנה, לחדש ימינו כקדם. השמרנים הם טוענים שכשאנחנו מתקדמים בהיסטוריה, אנחנו מתקדמים בניסיון וטעייה, כמו במדע, בניסיון וטעייה. כל מדינה, כל עם הולך לכיוון מסוים, לפעמים טועים, ואז צריך לחזור. לא צריך להוסיף על מהפכה עוד מהפכה ועוד מהפכה ועוד מהפכה, ובסוף לחסל את כל הטוב שהיה בעבר. לא. כשאנחנו הולכים לכיוון מסוים וטועים, מרגישים שטעינו, אז צריך לחזור, לברר איפה טעינו, מה המקום הבריא האחרון שהיה לנו, ולחזור לשם. כך עובדת השמרנות. אז זה לא כפי שאומרים לכם לפעמים, ששמרנים הם לא רוצים לשנות שום דבר, או שהם רוצים שהשינוי יבוא רק באיטיות. זה אנשים לא קראו את הטקסטים, הם לא מבינים בדבר, הם אומרים דברים כאלה. זה לא נכון. השמרנים מבינים שאנחנו בני אדם, בעולם של בני אדם הכל משתנה. תמיד דברים משתנים. אבל השאלה היא הכיוון של השינוי. האם השינוי הוא תמיד לעקור ושוב לעקור ושוב להרוס ושוב להרוס? האם זה הכיוון? או האם הכיוון הוא שלפעמים אנחנו עוצרים ואומרים לא, הרסנו יותר מדי, צריך לשקם, צריך רסטורציה, צריך לחדש משהו. כל הציונות היא שיקום מהסוג הזה. סטינו מהדרך, עכשיו אנחנו חוזרים לעצמנו.
Give you three reasons why. When I speak about this book in Europe, it's definitely not the case that nationalism or even patriotism is something you can talk about as a force primarily of good. That is a very distinct difference from Israel. Of course, not everybody in this country has exactly the same views on this. I've noticed in the times I've visited Israel that homogeneity of views is not necessarily an Israeli virtue. But broadly speaking, the mainstream of Israeli society recognizes that nationalism is a force of good and for Israel. That is not the case in Europe. It's not even, I would suggest, the case in countries like my own, albeit there's a strong patriotic strand still that it has attempted to make itself heard in recent years in particular. But nationalism is viewed in a very different light in Europe for reasons I don't need to elaborate to the way in which it's viewed here. A second example of a hearing difference, borders. Here in Israel, broadly speaking, the Israeli public recognize that strong borders, holding on to that concrete idea of borders, is a prerequisite for peace. Not so in Europe, where borders are believed to be, erroneously I think, the cause of war. Not completely erroneously. Before 1939-45, Europe did indeed go to war again over borders in 1914-18, a catastrophe also we haven't entirely got over. But that means that borders, the idea that if you hold on to hard borders, you're likely to have peace, is an idea which has suffered, at the very least, in recent decades. And a third example of something which is a hearing difference between Europe and Israel, and that is religion. Again, it's not as if there is a homogeneous view about religion in this country. But to a considerable extent, in my observation, even the most secular Israelis recognize that they are in some way in dialogue with the religion which has given birth to this country, the ideals of Zionism and much more. That people at least have to be in communion with the religion of their forebears. They have to contend with it. Again, not so in Europe, where religion is one of the things, along with, I would suggest, philosophy, almost all culture, and much more, which is, as I described in my book, all of these things are as if they are behind crime scene tape still. There is still police tape around all of these things. And not for bad reasons either. You know, this is, I always say, the worst type of criticism is criticism that has a point. And all of this has a point. It's not as if our fear about borders is completely insane. It's not as if our fear about philosophy is completely insane. But still, we're trying to work out what happened in our 20th century. And all of these things still spell danger. It's why ideas have been reduced in Europe to a sort of form of hermeneutical wordplay. The best you can hope from philosophy is the philosophy of language, for instance. Why? Because people are terrified of the bigger questions. Because they think if we go back to bigger, deeper questions, we'll do the 20th century all over again. We can't trust ourselves with ideas any more than we can trust ourselves with nationalism.
But as I say, it worries me that across Europe things happen and people are having to work it out for themselves, because the job of the media, let me just say this very quickly, the job that the media in Europe has largely imagined itself to have is to stand equidistant between the facts and the public. So the public can't deal with the facts. They might do terrible things if they have the facts. And maybe there's something in that in some
Is
place.
it done deliberately?
Oh yeah. And it is. We can't trust the public with this because we don't know what they do. Now, the great thing about this, as you allude to, is that the era of social media has both deranged us and also given us a possible answer. So Mark Zuckerberg is a friend some days and a massive foe on others.
Yes, because he wants to act as an editor-in-chief.
But it's so beautiful seeing it backfire, isn't it? I mean, that people were meant to absorb only one type of news, and then they absorb the wrong news, and they go to the wrong people, and then the public have the wrong opinions, and they vote for the wrong people. And then the politicians just have to forgive the public.